Hey, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me once again for Accountable, the after show. And today we talked about accountability as far as what do the voters think about accountability. I was hanging out at the polls quite a bit last week, talking to a lot of voters out there. And I've been doing all these reports, kind of leading the way about holding elected officials accountable. And so the question was posed to voters: what are you going to do to hold government officials, elected officials accountable after the votes have been counted? Once they take office, um, you now have the responsibility to hold those you put into power accountable. And of course, most people said that they were going to start keeping up with their elected officials, showing up at council meetings, leaving email, raising hell when things are not going the way that they say they should go. But it is definitely so important. Casting your vote, I mean, that is a major step. That's a big part. But you can't just stop there. I've had people, especially the seniors who are out there voting, they were telling me that over the years, they've always wanted to encourage the younger generation um, about the importance of being involved in their local government. A lot of excitement happens around the time when there's a presidential election, but there's an old saying that all politics is local. So there were some seniors at the polls that were talking to me about how they have encouraged their children and grandchildren to turn out the vote. There was a lot of disappointment in that because when you look at the breakdown from early voting, there are about 60, I would say 68,000 registered voters in Jefferson County. And as of early voting, only about 10,000 people have participated in the process. A lot of people were having these big discussions on social media like, what is it? you know, what's up? Why aren't people voting? Why aren't they turning out? Typically, these May elections have low participation. I think that candidates who are running and people who are out at the polls, poll workers, electioneers, all those people, they were under the impression that this particular election, specifically the one in Beaumont, would generate a lot more engagement at the polls than what they saw during early voting. Election day is Saturday, so that's going to be your opportunity to cast your vote. But once again, once you do that, what comes in next? And that's holding elected officials accountable. I've been to a lot of council meetings, Beaumont City Hall, for many years. All started back, I guess I'm going to go way back. I got to Beaumont in 1999, and Beaumont City Hall was my beat. And I remember all the regulars who would show up and, they would have their public comment time and they would point the finger at council. You need to do this, you need to do that. I guess a lot of you, do you remember Alan Lee? Oh yeah, I think I think a lot of us remember Alan Lee. He's since passed away. But we fast forward to now, and you do see the same people time and time again that show up at City Hall and demand answers from their elected officials. People are talking on social media and having these big that it's time to start seeing more than just the usual suspects, so to speak, at City Hall, that there needs to be more civic participation on what goes on with your local government. And hey, I mean, I agree. That's across the board. But voter turnout, particularly um, in Jefferson County, you can go back and look. The clerk's office, they keep record of this, but it's been historically low over the past several years. And so when you talk about holding elected officials accountable, first you have to get to the ballot box and you have to make your voice heard first. Because if you don't vote, there's no sense in complaining about everything that you don't like after the fact. I'm pretty sure many of you would agree with that. But I want to hear from you. We want this to be a two-way conversation. You can chime in and let's see. Aaron says, "Did this election see a decent turnout?" Aaron, as I just mentioned, those numbers, they look dismal. I'm just going to be honest. They're bad. Out of 68,000 registered voters in Beaumont, in Jefferson County, rather, and you only get about 10,000 to participate, that is not a good number. Um, we have to see those numbers come up. And I talked to someone who's running for local office today and say, I don't understand what's going on. What do you think? So kind of had a conversation that it can be many things, why people don't participate in the democratic process of voting. Um, Once again, these May elections generally have low voter turnout. Another thing is engagement, um, messaging. Are people connecting with the candidates? Are they connecting with the message? Um, a depressed population. What do we mean when we talk about a depressed population? I mean, we all can agree there's a segment of the population that I'm not a doctor, so I'm not saying depressed in a clinical sense, but just the feeling of depressed, like they don't fit in to the process, that they don't have a voice. I know it's just a mindset that's not true, um, but you have some people who feel like their vote doesn't count. I hear that all the time. Well, my vote's not going to count anyway. Or you hear other things like, oh, it's all rigged. It's all, I mean, there's a ton of excuses that people will make about why they do not vote, why they choose not to participate in the democratic process. But I'm going to tell you, after all those votes are counted and then months will go by and something will come up and they're like, oh, no one's fixed my street. The roads are terrible, or my, the drainage sucks, or, all these excuses. But then you ask that one question, well, did you vote? Yeah, yeah. They'll tell you, well, it's all rigged anyway. But anyway, have another question. I remember when Beaumont was named the most depressed city 3 years ago. Okay, we all can agree there have been all sorts of articles written about Beaumont, crime's bad, city's bad, there's nothing to do. Um, Videos on YouTube showing the most depressed part of town, and that's supposed to be all of Beaumont, what we represent. But I have traveled enough um, to have visited many small communities throughout the United States um, that are comparable to Beaumont, and they will tell you that they experience some of those same problems. Okay, we get that. I think that a lot of this comes from within. There have been people who are not from here and they say, oh, this is a really nice community, nice people, good food, great football, right? A crawfish festival just happened not long ago. There was the mural fest before that. A lot of things are happening, but I understand there's a lot of negativity to focus on the negative. And then it's like, your kids, they graduate from high school, and you're like, why don't you stay home and go to Lamar? It's like, stay home? What do you mean stay home? They think it's something better out there. And then, after a couple of semesters, they're back home in Beaumont anyway. But it's the same thing. People always think the grass is greener somewhere else. We understand Beaumont. And other surrounding cities, we have our problems or issues, um, but there are some positive things as well. But why not be the change you want to see, right? There's a lot of people complain a lot about things, complain about the mayor and council. Well, be the change you want to see. How about you run for office? What do you think about that? Yeah. Um, so, of course, people complain about a lot of things, but what are you going to do to make a difference? And so, to bring the conversation back to accountability, voting is the first step, but you have to keep with it after the election is over. Let's see another question. Do you think the majority or the council that gets elected are new things will change? Well, everybody has good ideas, but nothing's going to change unless you make it change, unless you demand there be change. Um, what's happening in the political arena here in Beaumont is probably pretty evident. What's happening all across the country is that you elect people, your local government, your state government, your federal government. You send those people to Austin, you send those people to DC, and then you never ever check in on them again. You would not know the email address to their office, you wouldn't even know the phone number. And so there comes a time when those people that we elect to represent us, they begin to represent their own self-interest. Now, right? Who's going to agree with me on that one? I'm going to stand on that. That'll be the hill I die on because it is so true. And then you get involved when you start to want to get involved when things really don't go your way, when you start, well, what happened to those social programs for our community? What happened to that funding you said you'll get to help build better roads and bridges and all that? Until things start to crumble, then you start to pay attention. And by that time, well, the people we send to Austin, DC, or whatever, they have their own self-interest a lot of times. I'm not naming names, so don't send me an email, uh, Senator so-and-so. I mean, I'm not naming names, but that is just the mindset and the mentality. Because if you don't check in on them, 10, 20 years pass, and so they're doing things for their own self-interest. I mean, it's a lot of money in politics. I'm going to leave it right there. I don't want to get into too much trouble with that one. If anyone has any more questions, absolutely. Send me some questions. Um, but I hope you enjoyed the report today that just aired on KFDM. It'll air again tonight on Fox at 9. I'm going to make it go live on our website, kfdm.com, so you can see the full report I did today. So I'm going to set that aside for now. So what's ahead? Okay. So y'all were thinking I was just going to stay in Beaumont, right? Nah. So my next report will be Orangefield. I like the people in Orangefield. Oh, they treat me real nice when I went out there to check on what's going on with their water situation. Um, it's not pretty. And the folks out in Orangefield, they are not happy because they just had a rate increase of their water and sewer bill. And we're talking about an additional about $45 a month on average on top of what they're already paying for water. And let me tell you, it's water that most times they can't use. I mean, you're going to see this story and is this America? That's what you're going to say. Is this America? And yeah, it's America. And so there are a lot of problems right here in Southeast Texas that we're going to work to solve. We can solve them together. We just got to hold those who empower accountable. And not only that, along with accountability, that comes responsibility, but we want to solve problems too. We want to help make lives better for everyone in Southeast Texas. So that's going to be a good one. And I'm not going to stop there. From Orangefield Port Arthur, and then Nederland's calling my name. So I'm going to be making my rounds all over Southeast Texas, bringing you these stories that matter. And what'd you say, Dax? Oh, I'm sorry. Dax is talking about something else. He heard Port Arthur and thought, no, it's something else, a totally different thing. But anyway, so I am taking all your story ideas. 6 News Accountable at sbgtv.com. Send me those emails. I'll check into it. I'll do the legwork. I'll do the open records request. Lord knows I've done a lot of those lately. So I want to get out there. I want to get some answers for you. I want to hold those in charge accountable. So I think that's it. That's a wrap. Until we meet again, and I hope you do join me soon, every Wednesday. I would say probably around 6:15, because after I'm in the studio and I do that story live, and then I'll run in here and then I'll hop on and chat with you. So until we meet again, hold them accountable. Bye bye.
Good job.